judge there said, quote, I don't see any evidence of what you're talking about. So the court of public opinion is one thing, and you can rile people up, but you get to the court of law, and you have to provide evidence. And so far, it's strike three out there.
I want to bring in Katie Hobbs, the Arizona Secretary of State, talk more about what's happening there on the ground. Welcome back. It's good to see you again, Secretary Hobbs. We now have seen more of the vote come in from Maricopa County this morning. Tell us where you stand. How much longer do you expect to go?
Well, Maricopa County has told us that they are going to be counting through the weekend, but I think they're going to upload more ballots that have been tabulated today at 7 p.m. tonight, and at that point, they should be under 100,000 ballots left. Statewide, we're sitting at about 240,000 ballots. 137,000 of those are in Maricopa County right now.
So you're closing in on finally counting the votes, but it's going to take a few more days. You have finished up, it appears, we've at least projected that Mark Kelly is going to win the Senate race. Have you had any other incidents in the last 24 hours? The last time we spoke, there were some demonstrations you were dealing with. What's the situation like now?
Those demonstrations continued last night outside of the tabulation center in Maricopa, and I'm going to continue with my message.
Every single vote.
Let the election workers do their job and tabulate the ballots, which is what you're asking for. And actually,
oversaw Tuesday's election, and continue to lead this impressive counting
potentially
operation.
causing delays.
I thank their hardworking staff and hope they all can get some rest soon. I also want to thank the employees of many city departments, which helped stand up and staff this operation. The Office of Innovation and Technology, the Managing Director's Office, Finance Department, our Police Department, Chief Administrative Office, and others have helped support the City Commissioners in preparing for this election for over a year. And there are hundreds of others, including many city employees, who helped on Election Day and by staffing this ballot counting operation for all the world to see. You are all too numerous to name, but please know that you have my thanks and the thanks of the people of this city. And most of all, I thank the people of Philadelphia. Earlier this week, Commissioner Dealey and I sent out an open letter to voters, urging patience and calm on Election Day and in the days that followed. You have shown it in spades. We ask that you stay calm and stay above the fray. You did exactly that. What we've seen on the streets outside this convention center was not anger or contention, and most I thank, but music, dancing, and celebration. As we predicted, the voters and residents of Philadelphia ensured that our city shined as an example of how to run an election correctly. So in the days ahead, please remember, this is not about a victory for a single candidate or a single political party. This is truly a victory for our democracy. That may sound cliche, but today it is oh so true. The votes will continue to be counted until every valid mail-in ballot, absentee ballot, and provisional ballot is counted. So while some, including the president, continue to spew baseless claims of fraud, claims for which his team has not produced one iota of evidence, what we have seen here in Philadelphia is democracy, pure and simple. Our founding fathers who conceived this system just a 15-minute walk down the street, I know would be proud. 233 years after the Constitutional Convention, we stand at this convention center and proclaim the system still works, the people have spoken. And God willing, we will have a peaceful transition to power in January. And I'd like to take this moment now to introduce Commissioner Lisa Dealey, who's the chair of the Philadelphia City Commissions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to thank all of you and the public for your continued patience. Our goal has been to produce accurate results as quickly as possible, and we've continued to work toward that end. We've counted a total of 690,360 votes. Of that, 337,609 ballots were cast by mail, and 353,021 were cast at a polling place. This is by far the largest number of mail-in ballots in the city's history. I'm very proud of the work our staff did. They've been working around the clock since Tuesday and before. Here's what you can expect in the upcoming days. At some point this afternoon, we will report another updated mail-in ballot results. I expect it to be 2,000 to 3,000. After that, the remaining ballots generally fall into one of three categories: those that require a review, provisionals, U.S. military overseas ballots. I would estimate there's approximately 40,000 remaining to be counted. We can also tell you that it may take several days to complete the reporting of that. And as you know, election results are not officially certified until 20 days after the election. Thank you again. Thank you to the citizens of Philadelphia. And now I would like to invite Commissioner Omar Sabir to the podium.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the County Board of Election staff. I would like to thank the taxpaying citizens of Philadelphia and across America. I think it's safe to say that democracy has won. Democracy is beautiful. We saw the statue of Octavius Cotto right on City Hall, where he died so that Americans can have access to the democratic process. And as we stand here today in 2020, people still have access to democracy. And it's a beautiful thing, but we still want everyone to exert patience, ignore a lot of the noise that's going on, allow us to complete the counting process. And again, I'd like to thank everyone. I would also like to thank my beautiful wife at home with my 6 children. While I'm down here doing all of the counting, I'd like to say, hi, wife, I love you and thank you. And right now, I'd like to bring on our Council President, Darrell Clark, who's a friend, who's a mentor, and a true leader of Philadelphia.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, everyone. So, to say this was a tumultuous year would be the understatement of the year. We in the city of Philadelphia and across the nation have gone through some very, very challenging times. But in spite of that all, democracy works. Democracy works. I want to thank the commissioners who were given a short time frame to transition from the traditional in-person voting that Philadelphians are known for to having a mail-in ballot system, to have multiple options. And guys, I just want to say you did a great job. You did a great job. But in all due respect to you guys, I want to thank the people that worked. Every time you went by Broad Street, or you went by City Hall, or you went by Delaware and Spring Garden, the lights were on because we had literally hundreds of hard-working individuals in there making sure that this process works. So I just want to thank everybody. I want to particularly thank the citizens of our city who understood the need to participate at record numbers to a degree. I want to thank the country for understanding the need to have a reasonable process that allows the citizens to speak. So to everyone involved, and particularly these individuals here, the mayor, the commissioners, thank you all, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to allow democracy to work. Thank you.
Questions?
Mayor, from what you've seen, do you believe Joe Biden will be elected president of the United States from what we've seen in the vote?
Yes.
What are you doing with the mail-in ballots that arrive Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? Are you sent? What are you going to count?
They are segregated as per the instruction of the secretary.
One at a time.
Can you clarify the number of votes that you said are left to be counted? You said 40,000. Do they include
No.
the ones from abroad?
Abroad? That's the military ballots? No.
So the total number left to be counted in the city is what?
It's upwards of 40,000. We don't the U.S. military overseas ballots aren't due to us until the 10th. No, we are counting hundreds of thousands of ballots in an industrial process, and we are fortunate to have that machinery to allow us to count faster, but it still is a process. So we get all these envelopes in, and it's like an assembly line. So first, you got the envelopes, you have to sort them, and then you have to open them. And then you have to open them again to get the secrecy envelope out. Then somebody actually sits there at a desk and is pulling the contents. and then the ballots have to be backbended and prepared for the scanner. So even though, we have all this machinery, it does help us, but we have to build up to that as we start the process. So it's the first time we did it. We're really happy with, the speed in which we were able to do it. And we're really happy that the people of Philadelphia afforded us the opportunity to be able to do this for the first time in Philadelphia, as it's the first time we've been able to vote by mail with no excuse.
Of the mail-in ballots, those that were separated, are they a part of that 40,000 that remain?
No. Well,
When will you count those? How many are those that were separated?
I don't know. They've been segregated.
Can I ask you just a detail about the monitors? We've heard the allegations from the president. Who is monitoring what's happening in the Department of Justice?
Everybody's monitoring. We have a live stream. Anybody can watch. You've all been watching it? There have been observers in the during the count. You could see them in the live stream.
How many segregated ballots do you have? How many segregated ballots? Commissioner, what about the ballots that have issues?
I can't answer two questions at the same time. It's not possible.
How about this one? How many segregated?
That's three questions out at the same time.
How many segregated ballots
Yeah.
do you have?
Let me do to our foreign friends. Yes.
To address and respond to the president's statements.
I think what the president needs to do is, frankly, put his big boy pants on. He needs to acknowledge the fact that he lost, and he needs to congratulate the winner, just as Jimmy Carter did, just as George H.W. Bush did, and frankly, just as Al Gore did. And stop this and let us move forward as a country. And that's my feeling. I doubt he'll listen to me, but that's it. I know. I know. No, he's wrong. He's wrong and he's baseless and he's Rudy Giuliani, so he says whatever he wants.
The ballots that were still needed to be counted, there are ballots with issues. So could you describe a little bit about the process that it takes to check the legitimacy of those ballots with issues, and what's the time frame for you guys to be able to finish counting? I assume you guys are doing it this morning.
We're going to continue to count the ballots as quickly as we can, without sacrificing accuracy, as we have from the beginning. That's where we're at. We'll be done, when we get done, because we still have ballots that we're scanning today. That there'll be another update, as I said, and we'll continue to do as we have been doing, ensuring that the ballots that we have are counted as quickly and as accurately as possible.
Can you clarify the segregated ballots you have?
Can you clarify what time you think you'll be
With
updating
quick-
us again?
We should have a little update this afternoon. It might be going up now or shortly.
And when will you start counting the segregated ballots?
We are in the process right now of counting, just like we were yesterday and the day before. It's the same process. We are counting ballots, and we will continue to do that as quickly as possible without sacrificing accuracy.
Two more questions, folks. Two more questions.
But how many segregated ballots do you have?
We are going to continue. I don't have that number. We're going to continue. We are going to continue to count the ballots until they're all done. In a way that people like as we have been doing for these past few days. We're going to get it done as quickly as possible, and it will be accurate. And we'll come out, and if we have something to tell you, you'll know. We sit as a return board. You've been on our website. The numbers get updated. There is a live stream. Everybody can watch. It's a very transparent process. It's a process that has been working for the past few days. It's the same process. We're just going to keep counting. We're going to keep counting. We're going to keep counting. Thank you.
How is the city preparing for protests this weekend?
Folks, that's it. Thank you very much.
Lisa, can I ask you about the live stream? Lisa?
So I think it's pretty obvious that this growth has gone on for a fairly lengthy period of time, but it is a dramatically different state than what it was back then. I think we've got on the sheet that we gave you also the registration figures back in 1984 and what they are today.
I was the first governor of New Jersey to ever have a lieutenant governor. We never had the position before I ran in '09. And I got down to 3 different people, and I called one of my old law partners who I really respect. And I said, here are the 3 people, what do you think? And his question back to me was, which one do you like more? He said, pick the one you like more. He said, because you're going to have to spend a lot of time with this person, and more importantly, you're going to want to spend a lot of time with them to make them important. And I think that's a really important element of it. Is Senator Harris qualified? Of course she's qualified. Does she represent important constituencies? Yes. But I hope, and I suspect from watching them interact, that it's true.
Yeah, we knew
they
had a warm relationship before the debates. There's some friction after that first attack in the first debate. They seem to recover from that.
No, and I think, listen, that's one of the things that will be advantageous if this is the way it works out for Vice President Biden, having all of those years of experiences. He's been through a lot of wars with a lot of people and then had to make up with them afterwards. I suspect that Senator Harris will be one of the easier ones he's had to do over the course of his career.
Good point. Cecilia Vega.
You know, I don't think we've really spent much time over the last few days looking back at the last 4 or 5 years of the Trump campaign turned Trump administration, because we're looking forward about what's going to happen in the next couple of days. But as my team and I were preparing to cover this election, we went back and just looked at some of the biggest moments of the last 4 years. And so many of the most inflammatory things that he has said have centered around race and racism and gender, from Charlottesville to Mexicans, are not sending their best people. They're sending, some of them are rapists, retweeting white power slogans down at the villages in Florida. And all of those things have led to what at times felt like made you question whether this tone and tenor had become just an acceptable way of dialogue in our country, whether people were okay with what they're hearing. And now when we look at what could potentially be this transition into someone like Kamala Harris coming into the White House as a vice president, I think it will make America pause a little bit and say, maybe that wasn't okay. Maybe this is not who we are as a country, and that we can move forward from some of this horrible ugliness that struck at the worst parts of our society for 4 years. And it wasn't just once. It was a real pattern of ugliness. So maybe now we pause, we take a breath, and we look back a little bit and move on and say that's not the way it has to be and won't be.
And we will see in the coming days if that is to be. Coming up on 1 o'clock here now in the East, and we've got some news out of Pennsylvania. Now, Joe Biden has now increased his lead to about 12,000. You see it there, 12,390 votes in the state of Pennsylvania. Rick Klein, let me bring you back in on this. Explain again how the decision desks of the networks are looking at this, how close we may be to a projection in these key states.
Yeah, so we see the same numbers that everyone else does, and we know that the overwhelming majority of the outstanding votes are from Democratic areas, and they're also mail-in votes, which tend to favor Democrats. But we continue to worry a little bit about the fact that there are some Republican-leaning counties that are part of the uncounted massive votes, and this question of provisional ballots. One of the big changes in the way that elections happen this year is that voters in Pennsylvania had the opportunity, like never before, to request a mail-in ballot. So many of them got it, and it's possible that a record number then came to the polls anyway. And then that takes more time to sort out whether that's a double count or it's an actual valid count, and it's taken counties more time to figure out the provisional ballot. So this is a lead that it's easy to see how it widens, but it's it's also possible to see that it narrows significantly, and we're back to a range of this state potentially, just potentially, being competitive.
And so we would not make a projection until we are as sure as we can be.
That's exactly right. We have been very cautious through this process, and I hope very transparent in explaining why we're coming to these decisions. And in this case in particular, we are going to be very, very meticulous in making sure we're right.
Okay, we are about to go off the air one more time. Let's recap where we are right now. 253 electoral votes for Joe Biden, 214 for Donald Trump's 22 states to 23. Joe Biden now has leads in the state of Arizona, the state of Nevada, the state of Georgia, and the state of Pennsylvania. He's behind President Trump in the state of North Carolina. As we said, we are going to go off the air. Our coverage will continue on ABC News Live, but we're standing by for any developments, any projections. Of course, we'll be back in prime time tonight with Vice President Biden. Have a good afternoon.
Three days after the election, President Trump's path to a second term is narrowing as we wait to find out who will spend the next.
If I need to do the roll call, TV One didn't have no election night coverage. BET simulcast CBS coverage. Okay?
Yeah.
All right.
I didn't know that.
OWN didn't have no coverage. Now, Bounce TV, they live stream Ed Gordon's coverage with the NAACP. BET.com, they live.
County than the House Democrats have in the entirety of the rest of the state, east of 75 and west of 65. So it was quite an accomplishment, and one that certainly we could have imagined, but did not necessarily anticipate, but are certainly gratified by it. And with that, the guy that even has a little bit bigger margin than we have, President Stivers.
Thank you, David and Senator McConnell. It was a good night and for Republicans, but I want to specifically speak about a couple of things.
We have registered voter services.
I wasn't here in
and
84.
Registered voter services, our voters can check to see the status of their ballot as far as it being received by my office. All voters should be aware that vote history will not be posted until after the canvass. So if you're looking on the Secretary of State site to see if your vote was posted as voted, you will not see that information. That information is not posted until after the election. Now, I'm going to go through a series of information here, and then we're going to give you an opportunity to ask questions. I have a change from yesterday. The expected turnout that I reported yesterday was incorrect. The 51,000 votes that I reported would be available today is actually a little over 30,000. And here's the reason why. When we process ballots on the counting board, our tracking mechanism changed from precinct-based ballots to page numbers. For the first time in Clark County, the ballot is so large that our ballot is actually 2 pages long. And so they have to track that when we scan ballots so that we can verify that the count on those pages is correct. My staffer inadvertently and mistakenly reported to me that there were 51,000 precinct ballots to count yesterday, and in actuality it was 51,000 pages. So that explains why when you saw the updates today, you only saw 30,000 instead of the 51. However, the universe of ballots that I communicated yesterday is still accurate. The only thing you need to do is take it down approximately 20,500 from the 51 to the 30,000. But the 63,000 ballots that I reported yesterday are in the system in various stages. So those will still expected to be reported. Beginning today, we will begin to report our results 2 times a day. So you've already seen the update for this morning. In the afternoon, we will be putting up a fresh report on the mail ballots that have been read into the system sometime before 4 o'clock. We're required to report to the Secretary of State first. Once they've indicated to us that they've received it and it's verified, we'll be able to post on our end. So rather than give you a specific time, I'll just tell you that it'll be sometime before 4 p.m. Now, one more time, I'd like to go through the ballots that are separate from that universe that I reported. We still have the provisional ballots. All of our laptops from Election Day have been downloaded, so all of that information is available to my staff. Today, we will start in earnest reviewing provisional ballots. There are 60,000 of those to go through in various categories. Now, I want to remind you that we have to coordinate with the Secretary of State because, again, we are not a top-down registration state. We work from the bottom up. So all 17 counties have to report to the Secretary. They still have not given me the instructions. I know that they're on the way, but at some point they'll let us know when to send our report up, and that will be the tool that they use to match against the other 16 counties in Nevada to make sure that nobody's duplicated a vote in one county to the next, because we want to prevent that. Once we do that, we can begin to release the provisional ballots into count. However, that won't happen until the Secretary of State verifies that report. A reminder that the ID required voters, their deadline is today at 5 p.m. For those who were required to provide an ID, that has to be sent to us by 5 p.m. today. We have a cure line available at 702-455-6552, where we have staff available to assist those individuals with getting that into us. The U.S. mail update for this morning. We received 241 ballots in today's mail that will be added to that number that I'm calling my universe of ballots to be counted. It's looking pretty clear that the number of ballots is going to continue to go down. However, I wanted to ensure the general public, we have been working very close with our regional supervisor at the U.S. Postal Service, and they're doing an excellent job of reviewing all of the post stations here in Clark County. In fact, they have them sweeping regularly more than once on a daily basis, and if they identify anything that needs to be delivered to the office, they get it to our office within 3 to 4 hours. It doesn't even go to the process of having it set up for us to pick up. They are physically delivering those. So we appreciate their effort. They're making sure, just as we are, that we're counting every ballot that's eligible to be counted. So our thanks to the U.S. Postal Service locally. The cure process is another group of ballots that we need to process. They have until Thursday, the 12th of November, to cure that. My staff will not leave this facility until we've counted all of those ballots that have been identified as curable. AB 4 was very clear in the legislative special session that we have to have all ballots counted by November 12th. And with that, I'll open it up for questions. Remember, you need to be at the mic. Good morning, right there. Right there, whoever's due. Yeah.
Good afternoon, or good morning, Mr. Registrar. Can you tell us the number of ballots that you expect in this afternoon dump? So you said the 31,000 was the total for this morning. It won't be, or 30,000. It won't be.
It was not 31,000.
I'm sorry,
yeah.
30. Can you? So let's just be clear here.
30,403 was the increase.
30,403. This afternoon, before 4 p.m., how many do you expect?
Because we're starting to dump 2 reports a day, I can't accurately give you that number. The only thing that I can tell you is the numbers that I reported as my universe of ballots that need to be counted is still accurate. So we know we're going to need to get approximately 63,000 ballots into the system.
So still 63. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
63,000 over the next couple of days will be entered into the system.
Okay, so 63,000 still outstanding. 30,000 this morning, and TBD, you don't know how many this afternoon?
No, I can't give you that number accurately because we've changed to a 2 report in the day, and so they're going to work as hard as they can. They're being very efficient back there in the way that they count through the ICCs, so we'll get as many in as we can, and then we'll continue to read after that report, and there will be another report tomorrow morning with whatever we read this afternoon and evening.
Okay, thanks. This is my colleague, Jolene Kent.
Hello,
Thank
Jolene.
you, Jacob. I know we talked about the pace yesterday, but there's increasing pressure on your county to count faster. You have the capacity to count 71,000 ballots a day. Why not process that number, Joe?
As I described yesterday, the process is very deliberate in the way we process here. So through the Agilis, which is our mail ballot processing system, that's the first step. That Agilis machine will verify signatures, and then those that aren't verified as a match, that has to go to manual physical process. And there are 2 steps in that process where we have staff running through those. We have to run those through those 2 steps, and then at that point it moves to our counting board. Our counting board then works to verify those records, to make sure that our batches are matching and that we're reconciling correctly. And they go through the process of separating the ballots and getting them over here for us to count. So there's no speeding up that process. As I indicated yesterday, we're going to continue to count and make sure that we're being accurate. We're anticipating and hoping that with the number of ballots that we see now, we should hopefully be ready to have a final count on the majority of mail ballots by Sunday at some time.
By Sunday. And what's your message to all of the people out there watching Clark County who say, come on, let's go, hurry it up?
I think I mentioned yesterday that our priority here is to make sure that we're accurate in what we're doing. So we're not interested in moving as fast as we can. We want to be accurate. We're very fortunate at this point that we've had staff working for many days and they're very efficient in what they're doing. So we're confident that the work is being done accurately. And that's what our main goal is.
Can you talk about the circumstances that require an ID? What are those ID required ballots? Because there's quite a lot of them. And how are those different from the other ballots that need to be cured?
The easiest explanation for the cure is that those voters who send back a mail ballot that is not signed at all, or that has a signature that doesn't match all of our history of signatures in the system, they enter into the cure process. That's statutorily required, and we have to mail a notice to the voter. And if the voter has given us an email or a phone number, we also contact them through an automated message with that as well. Those are the cures. The ID required can come from many different areas. In the state of Nevada now, we've implemented same-day registration. The online registrations that go through the Secretary of State's NOVA site, state law requires that those voters show up to vote. Our system indicates that they registered online, they're required to show an ID. So they showed up to vote in person, either early voting or election day, and they didn't have their ID. So they're required to provide that by today at 5 p.m. in order for those votes to count. We also have a large number of mail ballots. Everybody's well aware that we've sent a mail ballot to all active registered voters in Clark County. So there's not as much familiarity from the general public on what to do with a mail ballot. We very clearly indicate on the mailing envelope those voters who need to send in an ID, because in their registration, we were unable to match correctly with our check with DMV or Social Security, and so they must provide an ID in order for us to hold up the integrity of the process. So in those 2 groups, that's a majority of the IDs that are required. Next question.
Joe, a new federal lawsuit has, from the Trump campaign, has requested that the use of the Agilus system be stopped completely, and that instead all ballots be verified by hand, the signatures be verified by hand. What would that do to the counting process if your access to Agilus is lost?
If they were successful, I will mention that that's already been heard in court and that request was denied. So we're hoping that stays consistent. However, if we were unable to use the Agilus machine, we're working hard to get everything through now, so we won't have to worry about that. But that would slow down our process tremendously, because we've geared our process to count on the Agilus machine. So we would have to go completely manual at that point. And so, yeah, it would slow down our process without a doubt. Next question.
So the Nevada GOP has confirmed this morning that they have dropped or have come into an agreement with the county on the lawsuit that was issued yesterday. Can you comment on that?
Your question was that the Nevada GOP has...
They've confirmed that the campaign has dropped the federal lawsuit that was issued out yesterday.
Well, I may be incorrect, but I think they've reinstituted that. So I don't know if you have the current information.
Okay. From last week.
Hi, Mr. Gloria. Just to be completely clear, yesterday you said there were 63,262 outstanding ballots, correct?
Correct.
Today we have those 30,000, that new batch, and then so the outstanding ballots would be around 30.
No, sir. No, that's
33,000.
You're confusing the 2 numbers that I reported. So yesterday, What I stated that was that we expected to see 51,000 ballots read yesterday.
Correct.
Because the page numbers were reported mistakenly instead of the precinct count. That count went down from 51 to 30.
Right.
So
But the outstanding
63,000,
ballot.
let me finish. So the 63,000 are still in process and need to be counted.
So bottom line, I mean, outstanding ballots right now, out of that number of 63,000, still 63,000 24 hours later?
That is correct. $63,000. I wish you'd come to the mic so that I could hear you well. Anybody who wants to ask a question, please take the time to come up front. We're going to go right here.
Mr. Gloria, you mentioned receiving, I think, 241 ballots through the Postal Service today. How many do you know have you received since Election Day?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not prepared with the entire total. I have in yesterday's press conference, I believe that I mentioned that, oh no, I do have it here. So for Election Day and Wednesday, the mail intake was 4,208. Next question.
Good morning. In the lawsuit that was filed today, in addition to asking for the Agilis machine to be stopped again, they also allege that there were 3,000 plus instances of ineligible ballots which were cast. Do you have any evidence of that has been given to you? And do you have any knowledge of those 3,000 ballots that the Nevada GOP is alleging?
They provided us with a list. We'll have to begin to look through that. However, their lawsuit is based on something that happens regularly. You don't have to live here in order to be eligible to vote here. This is a military town. We have Nellis Air Force Base. We also have several students that travel outside of the state to go to school. Those folks are eligible to vote here in Nevada. We also have local representatives, congressmen, senators. They're up in Washington working, but they live here, they vote here. So we'll have to look through those numbers, but it's not out of the ordinary at all for somebody not to live here, but be eligible to vote here. So we will look at that and we'll review it. You need the mic.
Sorry, just to quickly follow up on the number of military ballots, sort of related but separate. You had also said the other day that's part of what you're going through in addition to provisional ballots. How many outstanding military ballots are there? Do you know?
The military ballots have been read into the system.
Hi. Oops, sorry. Can I just clarify the math?
Yes.
Total number of outstanding ballots, including the provisional, is what?
The provisional are beginning to be looked at in earnest today because all of the data has been dropped.
Just give me the number.
I'll answer the question. The provisional count will be 60,000.
Okay.
Mail ballots that still need to be run through the system and are expected to run through for count is 63,262 approximately.
Okay, and are we subtracting 30,000 from that 63 or not?
No.
So none of the 63 have been counted?
No, sir.
So where's that 30,000 number that you mentioned this when you
It's
first
in your report today. Check the website, clarkcountynv.gov/vote.
Okay, but so that why isn't that coming out of the 63?
Because I mentioned yesterday that we had 51,000 ballots to count. That was incorrect because I was given the number of pages.
Right.
30,000 is in the system and reported this morning.
So 30,000. So there's still 63,000 and the 60,000 beyond the 30,000.
Don't mumble.
So 30,000 were counted yesterday.
That is correct.
There are still 63,000 mail ballots to be counted.
That is correct.
And 60,000 provisional.
Those won't all be counted.
More
Some
or
of
less.
them won't meet the requirements for them to be registered, but they need to be reviewed.
Okay, and what are the hours of the counting?
The hours of what, sir?
What are the hours that your people are working on the count?
I can have a member of my staff make that available.
And how many people roughly are involved in this process?
At least 300.
Really? Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Gloria, at the risk of going back to math, from 51,000, we reported 30,000. Does that leave 21,000?
No, sir.
Okay. And?
I started out by explaining that the numbers I reported yesterday were incorrect, and I gave an explanation as to why.
Okay.
Our staff at the counting board incorrectly, mistakenly, provided me with the number of pages.
Okay.
that they sent over to be read. However, that was not the number of precinct ballots. Every ballot in Nevada that's sent to the voters represents 2 pages. And so there were actually only 30,000 ballots that were read. So I've corrected that and explained to you why that occurred.
So the 63,262 and no more than that?
No, there could be more. We still have cures, we still have IDs that need to be, and we still have provisionals.
And then
those are all outside of the universe that I've been reporting.
And then the final are the 241 that you said you received by the mail.
That's today, sir. Today through the mail, and that will continue to be received through next Tuesday.
Are they included in 63,262?
No, sir. Those are outside of that.
And thank you.
Joe, I think all of the confusion lays in why hasn't that number gone down? What happened between, not with the misreporting of the number, but why hasn't the number of ballots that were counted gone down? Between
if you're
yesterday
referring
and
to
today.
the 63,000 as
Correct.
we speak, they're reading them into the system, some of those. So it is going down. It's just not in this morning's report. This morning's report only goes up to the end of day yesterday. And so they're now processing those. We'll have some numbers to report just before 4 o'clock on that 63,000, and we'll continue to do so until we're finished with all of those ballots.
Joe, right here. So, and I'm staying on the math. Sorry, I'm right here. Staying on the math, so is it 63,000 and then the additional 60,000 provisional ballots? Does that mean, is it 123,000? Or am I confusing that as well?
60,000 provisional ballots need to be reviewed. They won't all be eligible to be cast. But yes, they still need to be reviewed. But I can't tell you how many of those will be moved forward to count.
The GOP has asked the Department of Justice to investigate some of the, and I'm just wondering if you received the list of the voters' names that they're looking into, and what's your...
I need you to be more specific with what list you're referring to. Is it in the lawsuit that they recently provided, or is there a list that I'm not aware of?
Regarding they're asking the Department of Justice to investigate.
I don't know anything about that. I can't answer that question.
A deal was struck allowing more servers to come in. Can you go into detail about that deal?
I can't hear you.
There was a deal. Observers to come in. Do you have any information regarding that deal? It was part of that lawsuit from last week that was cleared.
I believe that we agreed to provide some more observer locations in our counting board's location.
Okay.
But they've rescinded that, so I'll have to talk to my civil DA.
Okay, I'm sorry. I wasn't a good math student. I'm trying to get like a final tally of what we're expecting. So there's 63,000 provisional ballots that need to be reviewed, correct?
Correct.
In addition to that, there's another 60,000 ballots that aren't provisional that need to be...
That are provisional, but those won't all be qualified to vote. They need to be reviewed.
I understand it, but ballpark for me. So are we looking at 120,000 ballots need to be reviewed and are audited and counted, or is it 63,000 and change?
Let's make sure and clarify that there's 2 types of tally types that you're referring to. Provisional is electronic. Those are voted on the in-person voting machines. The mail that I'm referring to is separate. That's a different tally type. So that's the 63,000. So there's some electronic ballots that were voted provisionally that all need to be reviewed. They're held in queue. So they won't actually be counted until my staff correctly identifies whether they were eligible to be counted. So that's separate, but there's 60,000 plus the 63,000 that I've been referring to.
So
on
there's
mail.
roughly, just clarify for me, we're looking at roughly 123,000 ballots that still have to be reviewed, audited, and or counted. Is that correct?
That's what I'm reporting, but you need to keep in mind that we still have no ID voters that can show up. We still have cures that can still show up, and we also have U.S. mail.
Okay.
So I'd love to make it easier for you, but
No,
it's a complicated process.
I
So
think we all appreciate
what
it.
I'm
We
trying
just
to
need
do
a-
is give you the numbers on the large.
Sure. I think
what
we
that's
just all
available.
need a ballpark to be able to accurately report. We don't
So
want to say 60,000. when in
I
fact
think it's
120.
fair to say that the 63,000 mail and the 60,000 provisional are the largest chunks left that we have to review.
And again, not to misquote you, or I hope I didn't misunderstand, but you anticipate having those completed, counted by Sunday? Is that
The
what
mail.
you said? The mail.
And
So
we're
what's that
hoping to
number
have
again?
the mail done by Sunday if all goes well.
And that number again is what? I'm sorry. 60,000.
63,000.
Okay. Okay. So you're
Okay.
anticipating 63 more thousand ballots being completed, counted by Sunday, and then there's the other 60,000 that's yet to be reviewed, which will go through next week.
You've got it.
Thank you.
Next question.
Can I change away from math for a moment? How's your security? We've been
Outstanding.
reading about situation in Philadelphia. Have there been any credible threats to your knowledge to the voting count or your facilities in and around Las Vegas?
I really can't release any of the reports on anything that would be credible. We keep that within our law enforcement group, and they are dealing with it. I can tell you that they're monitoring social media for any threatening type of messages. As you can see, when you came today, we have a relatively large force of law enforcement plus our county security that's here in place. So I feel that the response has been excellent from the community, from the commissioners who called to make sure that we had that support. But it's just troubling for my employees. I have employees who are nervous leaving the building, and rightfully so. They work late into the night, so we've strongly encouraged all of them not to leave by themselves. They can also request an escort from our security people or law enforcement. So we're doing everything we can to protect our employees. And I think the response from local law enforcement and the assistance we received from our county commission has helped to make sure that that happens. So we're doing the best we can.
Folks, we got 2 more questions.
Speaker.
How about yesterday that you plus these numbers? So yesterday we have 44,000 ID requiring ballots and 2,100 ballots in the queue process. Is the same number today?
You know what? I was looking for you. Can you do that again? I didn't see you. I'm sorry. Could you just say it again?
Yesterday we're talking about 44,000 ID requiring ballot, and today and yesterday we have 2,100 ballots in the queue process. Is the same number today?
I would have to run that report for you. I did not come prepared with those numbers, but those were accurate yesterday.
Today we still have 40,400.
As I mentioned, outside of that universe of numbers, the mail and the provisional, we still have the ID required, we still have the cures, and we still have the U.S. mail that still has to come through. So yes, the answer to your question is those people are still eligible if they bring us an ID to have their ballot counted. One more question. Where is it?
Last question right here.
Last question right here.
Joe, can you talk about the settlement that came with the lawsuit going into last week, the reason behind it, and just anything moving forward?
I could just briefly say that the Republicans had communicated to our legal team that they were willing to drop their suit if we would provide some additional locations in an area that we were providing it as a courtesy. Again, I remind all of you, the only thing that is statutorily required for observers is we allow them to watch us count and tally votes, which is happening right behind us. Everything else that we've provided is provided as a courtesy. We're not required by law to do so. But that's what the settlement dealt with. But they've rescinded it, so I'll have to talk to my civil DA to see where we're at with that. Thank you all very much. We'll see you tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Joe, the DOJ is alleging criminal voter fraud. Have you seen any evidence of
time before 4 p.m. today, but anyone hoping for a quick resolution will be disappointed. There is still a ways to go in Clark County. There are still over 63,000 mail-in ballots that need to be counted. He says those should be counted by Sunday, but there's another 60,000 or so ballots that still need to be reviewed. And in addition to that, there are additional outstanding groups of ballots, some that require IDs, and the deadline to provide that ID is today. They are still receiving legitimate ballots in the mail. In fact, today they received about 241. Those numbers of mailed ballots do seem to be diminishing, however, which is why Gloria says by Sunday they should have a clear count of those over 63,000 outstanding mail-in ballots. Hello, everyone. I'm Tanya Rivero. Thank you for joining us. Joe Biden is knocking on the door of the White House, and depending on how things pan out the rest of the day, it's looking more likely that he will become the 46th president of the United States. All eyes are on Pennsylvania right now. Mr. Biden's lead there has increased over President Trump's. Now, that is thanks in large part to a surge of ballots counted in Philadelphia earlier today. If Biden wins the Keystone State, he is heading to the Oval Office. The race is even tighter in Georgia, however. Joe Biden is leading President Trump by just over 1,500 votes. Officials there say they plan to hold a recount. Meanwhile, Biden is still leading President Trump in Arizona, though his lead there has shrunk slightly. In neighboring Nevada, the former VP has doubled his lead over President Trump by about 22,000 votes. So big picture, here's where things currently stand. Joe Biden's magic number is 17. That's how many more electoral votes he needs to hit the necessary 270. He's got a couple of paths to victory. He can either win a combination of Arizona, Nevada, or Georgia, or he can win Pennsylvania outright. President Trump's path is much more narrow. CBSN's political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns is standing by in Philadelphia. Caitlin, welcome. Great to see you. So, given what we know about the remaining ballots out there, is Joe Biden likely to relinquish the lead he has in Pennsylvania?
That seems unlikely at this point because the more that the votes are being counted, the larger Biden's lead is growing. His lead currently, as it stands at this hour here in Pennsylvania, given the amount of ballots that have been counted, is about 13,000 votes. Now remember, these are all ballots that were cast by the end of Election Day. Here in Pennsylvania, there's been a lot of focus on a state Supreme Court ruling that said that ballots received up until the end of the day today could still be counted if they were postmarked by Election Day. But election officials have been separating out those ballots. So when we're talking about the total ballots counted here in Pennsylvania, it's just really important to reiterate that these are the ballots that were cast by the end of Election Day. So just to make that clear. In this building next to me, where we've been reporting all week, is the Pennsylvania Convention Center. That's where all of the ballots in Philadelphia County have been counted. There are still about 40,000 ballots left to be counted. The commissioners' bipartisan group just gave a press conference, so they said about 40,000 votes remain to be counted in there, and those include provisional ballots and military ballots. Remember, our service women and men overseas tend to vote absentee. Those ballots are still being counted. We're expecting about 2,000 to 3,000 more votes to be counted in Philadelphia today. So we're keeping an eye on those numbers, but it's just important to reiterate that the more that ballots are being counted, the larger Joe Biden's lead is growing here in Pennsylvania.
And so what are you seeing there in Philadelphia as they continue to count the votes, Caitlin? And when can we expect them to sort of officially wrap it up across the state?
Well, it's not clear when they'll officially wrap it up. There are still those votes I was talking about in Philadelphia. Also in places like Allegheny County, which includes Pittsburgh, they're still counting ballots there. The scene here in Philadelphia is very much focused around this convention center. I don't know if you can see behind me, we've been following demonstrators supporters of President Trump urging they're saying that this election is being stolen, which is not true. And then you have demonstrators urging people to continue to count the votes. But it seems like a celebratory environment here. Music is playing, and people are very much focused and paying close attention to what's going on inside this building.
All right, so Caitlin, let's also talk about Georgia, where counted absentee ballots just put Biden into a very slim lead. The Secretary of State there says they are going to a runoff. What are the next steps now? And if Biden holds on to his lead there, how significant of a victory would this be, even beyond those 270 electoral votes?
Right, so our latest numbers in Georgia, Biden's lead there is just 15,000, Biden's lead in Georgia is 1,500 votes. Now, that's significant, but it's a slim margin. And the Secretary of State today in Georgia said that this is going to be a recount because it's within a half percentage point, so well within the rules for a recount there. We interviewed the Secretary of State a couple of weeks ago in Georgia. He's a Republican, and just to reiterate, he has expressed full confidence in the integrity of this election. He has also encouraged people to vote absentee and vote early. And so this comes as the president last night inaccurately characterized places like Georgia as being run by Democrats. They're not. The Secretary of State in Georgia is a Republican. The governor is a Republican. So just to make that clear, it's also important to keep an eye on Georgia, not only for the presidential race, but 2 Senate seats there are heading into a recount because none of the candidates received more than 50% of the vote. So 2 Senate seats up for grabs means that we may be spending the holidays in and around Savannah, hopefully, but that Georgia will be kind of center stage for the coming weeks because of that recount. It's a key state. No Democratic presidential candidate has won there since 1992. It's a red state, but demographics in areas like Atlanta are changing, and this is a place where Democrats have felt like they could grow.
Well, Savannah would be a lovely place to spend the holidays. Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you so much for joining us. Police in Philadelphia are investigating an alleged plot to attack the convention center where votes are being tabulated. Police reportedly received a tip that a group, possibly a family, was driving up from Virginia to unleash the attack. One man has been taken into custody. Police say they recovered a weapon. They also seized the same vehicle they believe was described in the tip. No injuries were reported. Meanwhile, President Trump is again spewing unfounded and patently false information about the integrity of the election. The president again calling the mail-in ballot system corrupt, baselessly arguing Democrats are rigging the election. Ed O'Keefe has more on the president's claims.
With victory seeming to be slipping away by the hour, President Trump falsely accused Democrats of stealing the election.
If you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us.
But votes that are being counted across the country are legal ballots that arrived on time. The president also implied there's something nefarious about mail-in ballots that are being counted.
It's amazing how those mail-in ballots are so one-sided, too. I know that it's supposed to be to the advantage of the Democrats, but in all cases, they're so one-sided.
But Mr. Trump spent months railing against mail-in ballots to his supporters, discouraging them from using the process.
Protect our vote. Count valid votes.
And now some of the president's supporters are protesting at counting sites in several states, and with tensions high, he attempted to cast doubt on the legitimacy of the ongoing count, slamming 2 cities, led by Democrats, where mail-in ballots are still being counted legally.
Detroit and Philadelphia, known as 2 of the most corrupt political places anywhere in our country, easily cannot be responsible for engineering the outcome of a presidential race, a very important presidential race.
Former Vice President Joe Biden didn't speak after the president's remarks, but tweeted that no one is going to take our democracy away from us. Not now, not ever.
Good afternoon.
Earlier, Biden had reiterated his calls for patience.
I ask everyone to stay calm, all the people to stay calm. The process is working. The count is being completed, and we'll know very soon.
And Biden said again that the election's results should be left to the voters.
It is the will of the voters No one, not anything else, that chooses the President of the United States of America. So, each ballot must be counted. And that's what we're going to see going through now. And that's how it should be.
The president also said that courts would be involved.
We think there'll be a lot of litigation because we can't have an election stolen like this.
His legal team has launched lawsuits in several states challenging the ongoing count, but judges in Georgia and Michigan dismissed 2 of the suits Thursday, saying there's no evidence to support the claims. Ed O'Keefe, CBS News, Washington.
Sources say President Trump does not plan to concede, even if Joe Biden is projected to win and declares victory. We are closely watching Pennsylvania, where Biden is in the lead. Winning that state would put him over the 270 electoral votes needed to secure the presidency, as we said earlier. So for more on this, I want to bring in Meredith McGraw. She's a White House reporter for Politico. Meredith, welcome. Great to have you with us. How is the White House currently responding to Biden's lead in Pennsylvania and Georgia?
Publicly, they've been defiant. We've seen that with President Trump. Even though he has nothing on his public schedule today, he did just release a statement through his campaign where he said, we will pursue this process through every aspect of the law to guarantee that the American people have confidence in our government, and I will never give up fighting for you and for our nation. Now, in talking to sources on the campaign, they have said that the president does not have any plans to concede if, in fact, the race tightens even more and Biden shows to be the clear winner here. The president is going to continue pushing forward with these legal challenges that his campaign has mounted. Although I will say, in talking to these people, there is a recognition that this is a real uphill battle. And there is an amount of PR that goes into this. They are really laying the groundwork for the president to be able to claim that he thinks this election is illegitimate. And it's something that the president has been laying the groundwork for months. He has encouraged his own supporters to not use mail-in ballots. And we've seen how that's backfired for him in this case. And he's also talked about widespread voter fraud, which we have not seen any evidence of so far. So there is an understanding that this really is an uphill battle, and you shouldn't expect to see the president come out anytime soon to say that he concedes this race.
Right. And, you know, as you said, his public image has been very defiant. He said he will not concede even if Biden declares victory. So is there any update on this position, though, as Biden seems, you know, not only on the cusp of winning Pennsylvania, but, you know, on the cusp of winning Nevada? You know, you could say Georgia's too close to call. You can say Arizona's too close to call. But he may very well end up winning all of these, you know, toss-up states. Would the Trump administration continue to go forward with litigation in that case?
It seems so. They are planning on pressing forward no matter what. That seems to definitely be the stance of the president himself. Although one person close to the campaign I did talk to this morning said that if Biden does end up winning here, this is kind of a perfect scenario for the president, because he will be able to claim that the party, they brought in more voters, minority voters. They held on potentially to the Senate. They picked up more seats than they expected in the House. And the president will be able to go on saying that he thinks he was robbed of this election, which fits into the talking points certainly that he's had for a long time now.
He has liked to paint a picture of himself as constantly beleaguered and constantly the target of you know, sort of either a mysterious campaign to bring him down or a very specific one, depending on your point of view. But I'm sure that will continue. Now, in terms of these lawsuits that are likely to also continue, the Trump campaign has already launched several of them. But there doesn't seem to be, or at least I seem to be missing it, a sort of concrete legal strategy that unites them. What do we know about their legal strategy going forward?
Well, it varies state to state, and that's been a frustration by some on the campaign. You know, they've talked about, Florida in 2000, that was just one state, and they feel that it really is a challenge being able to push all of these different legal, these lawsuits in states across the country that, of course, have different election laws. They're dealing with different scenarios, and they're alleging different things. It's not just one state like Florida where they can really narrow in on things. And we've seen the campaign dispatch some of their top surrogates, top aides, everyone from Rudy Giuliani and Pam Bondi and Corey Lewandowski and David Bossie. They're all out there in these different states trying to make their case and trying to do it in front of TV cameras, as we saw yesterday, to try to garner up some support there on the ground. But it really is going to be an uphill battle for them. The legal path is really narrow in some of these states, but the Trump campaign's general counsel came out with a statement this morning that said that they are still going to be pressing forward regardless of what happens here.
All right, so certainly no end in sight. All right, well, Meredith McGraw, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The Biden campaign says it wants every single vote counted before a winner is declared. They don't want to leave any stone unturned. Let's bring in Nicole Killian now, who is in Wilmington, Delaware. She's with the Biden camp. Yeah. Nicole, welcome. How is Team Biden responding to everything that is transpiring today?
Well, for the most part, they are laying low. We really haven't heard much from campaign officials in the form of a formal schedule today. We do know, however, that the former vice president is preparing to address the nation tonight in a primetime address that he will be joined by his wife, his running mate, Senator Kamala Harris, as well as Senator Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff. You can see behind me, they still have the same setup that they did election night. And we have heard, them doing sound checks and other people kind of checking the stage. So read into that whatever you will. But look, they continue to track the numbers. They're watching this carefully. They did feel very confident about their chances in places like Pennsylvania and Georgia. They knew the numbers were going to tighten, but they feel like in the end, they were waiting for this moment when they would overtake the president, particularly in those states. But, at this point, they're just kind of waiting more or less to see if they hold.
Right. And of course, Pennsylvania is obviously the big ticket win here. But history books are also showing that if his lead holds, Joe Biden flipped Georgia, and Democrats haven't won that state since 1992. Nicole, as you know, there is one woman in particular who's being credited with playing a major role in this happening, correct?
Well, yes. There are lots of people who played a major role, but certainly one who's taking a lot of the credit and who gets a lot of the credit is Stacey Abrams, of course, with her own historic run for governor in the state in 2018. And what's interesting is that about a week before the election, the Biden campaign held a press call with Stacey Abrams. And so at that time, I did ask her about the possibility and the prospect of Georgia flipping and what role, if any, she thought her own candidacy may have played in that. And what she said at that time was that she was very bullish about the state and that in essence, her campaign did help lay the groundwork. She pointed out that previous presidential candidates hadn't really invested in the state, or if they did, it was nominal. But with her campaign and her candidacy, they invested some $40 million in the state to reach voters who hadn't necessarily been reached out to before. She also pointed to the increasing diversity in the state, the significant African-American electorate compared to other battleground states. And so putting that all together and the investments that the Biden campaign made in the state, she felt that, that really was a pathway potentially for victory for the Biden campaign. And it seems like her projections are playing out.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the African-American electorate in Georgia. And of course, African-Americans don't vote as a monolith, as does no, group. But is it at about 33%? Is that correct?
That is a figure that she provided, and noting that it is the single largest black electorate out of any of the battleground states. And so what she pointed out was that that is a significant, again, when you put that investment into the state, and certainly part of the playbook that she put in 2018 was to driving up turnout there. You know, she also pointed out, as far as the white electorate in Georgia, she said that, and again, this was about a week prior to the election, but that, white voters or white voter support for the former vice president outpaced what she got in 2018. So again, the combination of that with that broader outreach to a more diverse electorate really she felt would be a winning combination.
All right. Well, Nicole Killian, thank you so much.
You bet.
And a quick programming note, there will be a 1-hour special Red and Blue tonight. Elaine Quijano will bring you the latest on the new developments and how they will impact the outcome of the election. Red and Blue will stream today at 5 p.m. Eastern right here on CBSN. And still to come, as America waits for a winner, a record number of people test positive for COVID-19.
The rise in cases and hospitalizations is unsustainable.
More than 120,000 new cases were recorded just yesterday, and officials fear the hospital system cannot keep up. And a better-than-expected jobs report,
she is at Joe
but
Biden
millions of
headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware. You've been noting that they are feeling very good, very optimistic, but this is not a done deal yet, Kristen.
This is not a done deal, Lester. You're absolutely right. And I heard you talking about the possibility of a concession call. I can tell you, based on my conversations, Vice President Joe Biden's not going to wait for that before addressing the nation if there is, in fact, an official call in this race. Now, we have been told that he is watching these returns. He's feeling quite confident, and we heard that in his remarks yesterday. When he spoke for about 2 minutes. He reiterated he wants to see every vote counted, but he was quite bullish. He said he believes once that happens, he and Senator Harris will prevail in this race. Now, if and when we do hear from Vice President Biden, we're told that we'll also hear from Senator Harris. What will their tone be? Well, according to one advisor, he is going to talk about healing, unity, and coming together as a nation. Really the themes that have governed his entire campaign. But it's also significant because what we are seeing play out is such a sharply divided nation. The margins, as we've talked about over and over again, have just been so close in each of these key battleground states. And so he knows that if he is, in fact, the person who winds up winning this race, that is going to be his first and arguably one of his toughest challenges, to try to bring this country together. And he talked about that. He said, look, I'm not naive. I know that it's an uphill battle, but it is something that needs to be tackled. In terms of the rhetoric that we're hearing from President Trump, that official statement went out. I think Kate's right. Let's see what he has to say on Twitter. But the Biden campaign, and I'll just remind everyone, has been quite defiant, releasing a statement saying, as we said on July 19th, the American people will decide this election, and the United States government is perfectly capable of escorting trespassers out of the White House. Lester.
All right. Thank you, Kristen Welker, for that. Peter Alexander is at the White House, and we got the statement from the president just a short time ago. Peter, what can you tell us?
Yeah, Lester, that's right. You know, it's notable as you saw that statement from the president today, just how different it was from what we heard from him publicly yesterday in the briefing room, where he was making those false claims without evidence of widespread voter fraud, claims that even members of his own party pushed back on yesterday, calling them inflammatory and dangerous. And then this new statement from the president that really doesn't sound a lot like his voice, very different, saying this is a much bigger issue, an issue of transparency, an issue not about any single